This summer, the California Supreme Court made this state the second in the nation to validate same-sex civil marriages. And this November, Proposition 8 will confront California voters. Proposition 8 proposes to remove the right of same-sex couples to enter into legal marriage. And I wanted to talk to you this morning because I believe that supporting same-sex marriage equality pays the civil institution of marriage the respect that it demands. Many members of this congregation probably remember me because I grew up in this Chinese Church in Christ. For any of the newer faces, let me introduce myself again. My name is David, and I am now a doctoral student in physics in New Jersey. As part of my studies, I traveled to academic conferences, and this summer I met with other physicists in southern Germany. This is Peterskirche, St. Peter's Church, and it dates back to the year 1180. I just like photographing landmarks from other cultures. I also enjoy talking to researchers from other countries to learn how they think. So I was lucky that an Egyptian student studying in Saudi Arabia approached me one evening to talk about religion. He thought I was Indonesian, and I think he was hoping to have fellowship with another Muslim. I think it's the goatee. To have fellowship with another Muslim. And I told him I was atheist. Then he asked how Western media portrayed Islam. He assumed I held Western misconceptions, and he wanted to correct me. I reassured him that I watched the media with a grain of salt, and personally, I would not blame a religion for terrorist attacks because I hold people, not their religions, ultimately responsible for their actions. I did ask him about one aspect of Islam. I wanted him to tell me whether Islam's position on gay and lesbian people was as negative as the media portrayed. And he confirmed that Islam holds that homosexuality is unnatural. He said it's worse than adultery. Then I told him I'm gay. I told him that American psychological associations warned against curing gays. The professional medical community considers lesbians, gays, and bisexuals normal. I told him that being gay was normal, and he dismissed me saying, I can understand growing up in a culture like that, how it would seem normal. But then he paused and admitted he had no personal experience from which to pass judgment because I was the first gay person he had met in real life. That evening was scary. I considered my safety, and I hesitated before I revealed my sexual orientation. But looking back, I was glad to let this Egyptian student meet a living example of a gay man, because living openly is very important for me. It affects how people, quote, pass judgment, as the student said. That's why I wanted to speak with everyone here today. I wanted you to see that I, a gay man, am a real human with real interests. I wanted especially to tell you that marriage is a real interest among lesbian, gay, and bisexual people. Let me do that by reading a note I wrote to celebrate the marriage of two of my friends that I've known for years. They're now at graduate school with me. Dear Colin and Audrey, I wanted to thank you for helping me to understand the meaning of marriage. I've supported fighting for same-sex marriage for years, but my motives were not always admirable. Fighting for equality was too often an instinctive attempt to annoy fundamentalists who said I could be, quote, cured of being an abomination. Sometimes I couldn't care less about marriage itself. I felt that filling out a marriage application was invasive and insulting. It felt like petitioning government for permission to enter a relationship. Looking back, I think that the sterility of my views probably resulted from lacking, on the one hand, the subjective experience of love, and on the other hand, the examples and languages with which to describe that love. By sharing their lives with me, my old married friends, and you know the type, they squabble, they can't stand each other, but they can't stand to live without each other. These friends have taught me a language with which I could understand love and marriage better. You, Colin and Audrey, have been among such friends, and I try to honor your recent wedding by practicing this language as art. In special moments, a person feels that half of his heart is missing. In its place, half of another's beats as part of his own. It feels as though a piece from each partner joins its complement, to become together a vessel collecting awareness, intents, and consequent actions that are intertwined with, and at the same time distinguished from, each of the two selves. Coherent awareness, intent, and action together embrace features that demand rights and accept responsibilities, features of personhood. Personhood is a serious concept that entails civic and social consequences, and I can't mention this magic word, personhood, without talking about the civic respect it deserves. Government and society confer recognition, rights, and obligations in accordance with the degrees of personhood emerging from individuals and the groups they form. For example, we confer upon corporations the status of so-called juristic persons. They can do business, and they can appear in judicial proceedings as entities distinct from their constituting partners. And if legal personhood suits a corporation, and many of us agree that it does, then I say that legal personhood suits a loving union. But I also want to go further to say that a loving union is special. A loving union establishes, and is established upon, deep emotions. So a loving union is tightly and cohesively more an individual than a corporation is. We afford this special unit of personhood the legal and spiritual dignity and recognition that we call marriage. As I see it, marriage licenses and marriage rights, that's right spelled R-I-T-E, do not request permission to form unions any more than birth certificates and christenings request permission to form children. The loving unions and children already exist by the time marriage licenses and birth certificates are granted. A marriage license notifies society of the existence of a union fit for rights and responsibilities. In other words, a union capable of a degree of citizenship. A marriage, R-I-T-E, right, celebrates the union's membership in a religious community. In other words, the union's capacity for spirituality. Thank you, Colin and Audrey, for helping me understand. Yours truly, David. Now, in reading this note, I just talked about meaning in marriage without mentioning the gender of the constituting partners. The meaning of marriage does not depend on the gender of the constituting partners, and I think that removing the right of same-sex partners to full legal marriage pays disrespect to marriage by distracting from its meaning, or at least the meaning that I see in it. So, I will respect the meaning that I see in marriage, by voting to maintain equality in California. I am voting no on Proposition 8.